What happened? Nobody's talking.
All right.
I'm gonna put my glasses on.
Good idea.
Yeah,
So I think, are we all familiar with Zoom? It sounds like a lot of us have been in a lot of these meetings. If anyone needs anything, let me know. Kathy or Bill, are you hearing us?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for something to happen.
Okay, sounds good. So we will get going. So really quick overview of the evening's agenda. We will walk everyone through all steps of this, and it will likely be a little bit of an abbreviated version this evening. So I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. I wanted to welcome our participants this evening. You know, this is one of those opportunities. Zoom actually affords us an ability to view this from the comfort of our home, especially on a soggy Tuesday evening. So I do appreciate those of you that did sign on. I first want to acknowledge that this study is the direct result of a grant that came to the City of Torrington and the Northwest Hills Council of Government. The state grant was designed to afford us an opportunity to really study the access and egress on and off of Route 202. That's what we affectionately refer to as our East Main Street corridor. As a result of that grant, we were able to pull together this great team of experts where we have BSC as our consultant with Val Farrell from Good Earth. Janelle Mullen is representing the Northwest Council of Government this evening, and Rifta Malanka, who is economic development for the city developer for the City of Torrington, who I have to, as an aside, add that she's just made it her personal mission to make Torrington a walkable community. So the goal here is to return the state's investment of grant funds by identifying ways that we could make safe street access and egress and a more comfortable transition to the businesses and neighborhoods along Route 202. Before I turn this back over to Janelle, I have to add as an aside, I do believe that I am the only person on the call that remembers East Main Street at a time where it was much less developed. There were very few commercial spaces developed. There was a bowling alley and there was a McDonald's. And actually kids hung out at that McDonald's and they cruised up and down East Main Street. It was really American graffiti-esque. I might even add that some kids might have even done a little street racing on 202. So what we see now in today's transportation is that this is a heavily congested route. It is tricky getting in and out of those businesses, trickier getting in and out of those neighborhoods. So I really do look forward to seeing what comes out of all of this work that's being done. With that said, I'll turn it back over to you, Janelle.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that we aren't making any decisions this evening. The purpose is really just to have an informational session and introduce everyone to the project and discuss where we are and where we plan to go. And that said, I'll turn it over to Rista.
Yeah, Mayor, did you want to talk a few minutes about this slide, or do you want?
So yeah, let me, because on my iPhone, that's a very small slide. Let me pull this up. Okay, so the overview. You know how we got here. As I was saying earlier in my opening comments, over the last several years, what we've recognized is that there's been a tremendous amount of development in the city of Torrington over the decades. And a lot of it has been occurring in isolation. You'd see, spits and spurts of it here and there. You'd see, a cluster of development in one area with no real connection to the other areas of the city. There was a way to get from point A to point B, but there was no smooth transition, no, no identification or signage or wayfinding that told you where you're going and why you're going there. So over the last 5 or 6 years, through the Economic Development Office, there's been great focus given on that connectivity. So the Community Connectivity Grant, which was granted to the city in 2016, is designed to provide that road. It was designed to provide a road safety audit. DOT came to the city of Torrington. We actually walked around to look at all of those points where 202 intersects with Main Street, where Main Street then transitions into a lot of those neighborhoods, and to more of the development that had been happening in the recent years, such as the courthouse over on the west side of Main Street. Further to identify, what is it we're really trying to provide anybody, especially vehicular traffic or foot traffic, what is it that we're trying to drive that traffic to? We want to create this destination in the core downtown area. So we were pursuing a number of grant opportunities and studies. Val Farrow has been actively engaged and involved in the majority of those studies to help drive the downtown revitalization. Out of the BAR grant, which was awarded to the city of Torrington to help identify how we can infuse the areas around a brownfield with revitalization, help those property owners around those brownfield areas capitalize on their own investments. That BAR grant had us focusing on some of those key areas that continue to connect the various sections of town, West End, East End, North End, South End, to our downtown. And through that BAR grant, we were able to really hyper-focus on our Franklin Street, Franklin Drive, and Franklin, what came out of that as Franklin Plaza. For those of you that are from Torrington or visit Torrington frequently, that plaza development is just in its final stages of completion. We're waiting for light poles and catenary lighting to be installed in the next few weeks. But it is a perfect example of how these studies provide us with a roadmap that can spark redevelopment. The investment that we make in an area such as Franklin Street then becomes the welcome mat to further development, similar to what we're having with Penrose, which is a little bit further down Franklin Street, and potentially setting the stage for more development around the corner where the Nidec property was. So fast forward to the East Main Street, the work that we recognized. As soon as you identify one street that sort of feeds into another street, like Franklin Drive and Franklin Street and Franklin Plaza now feed into Main Street and East Main Street, we recognize that it's kind of, you identify a problem and then it just highlights all those other problems that exist. And we quickly came to the conclusion that sidewalks were desperately needed to be continued, improved on Lower East Main Street and continued all the way up Main Street. RISTA, again, being so hyper-focused on a walkable community, chased a grant through the Connecticut Responsible Growth and Transit-Oriented Development grant opportunity and was thankfully awarded $1.7 million for us to undertake construction of sidewalks up East Main Street. Of course, you get a gift like $1.7 million and everybody thinks, oh, good, sidewalks will, be put in next week. It doesn't quite happen that way. We are still under the planning stages and going through the various reviews with the Department of Transportation But we do know that we're closing in on their final approval, and with our fingers crossed, hope that we can get that project out to bid next spring. When we undertook that, that we are identifying, all right, sidewalks, how do they go up? What side of the street should they be on? What properties do they impact? It became abundantly clear that the corridor access really was such an important piece of that. So that's where we are today with the Connecticut East Main Street corridor study. This is so important, as I said earlier, because it really identifies those access points, how to easily transition traffic to businesses and to the neighborhoods, and I think make it just a little bit easier and more comfortable for people to drive up and down and access those businesses. With that said, I have to share a story. So my mother-in-law, who does still drive, God bless her, she's well in her 80s, and about 10 years ago, she stopped driving on East Main Street because it was just too uncomfortable for her to have to watch all of those side streets, who was creeping out to try to get into a lane. So I was tremendously grateful that the COG saw fit to partner with us on this application, and more importantly, that the state saw fit to award this. So I think that in a roundabout way explains how we got here.
Great, thank you.
I just want to take a few minutes before we get into the technical advisory committee to just give you a quick summary of what the study is all about and what some of the goals are. As you just heard the mayor talk, the city has been putting a lot of effort into improvements along the corridor, and if you're at all familiar with the corridor, you also know that there has been a lot of private and commercial development over the past several years. If you're familiar with the corridor, you also know that there's a wide variety of challenges. The way the corridor feels down in downtown is different than Target, up by Target, but we know that it can impact the whole corridor traffic or development. So we jumped at the opportunity, like the mayor said, when we were able to do a comprehensive study. And we knew that this just could not be another traffic study. It has to be more than that. We have to look at all forms of transportation, the existing uses, what regulations and guidelines impact development, where is there room for future development, and look at it kind of as a whole to determine what recommendations we can make and strategies we can put into the plan to guide smart growth. So we developed a technical advisory committee that was well-rounded, that could help advise our consultants and work closely with our consultants to do this. So Mayor Carbone is a part of the technical advisory committee, myself, city planner looking at regulations and zoning, Paul Cousins, who's our deputy public works director and city engineer, who's doing a lot of the design work for sidewalks and makes recommendations on site plans. Janelle, not only because she is a partner in this project, but she brings in a regional perspective to this study. And also Craig from DOT, also a partner in this project, but I think just as important, if not more importantly, this is a state road. And we know that we have to work collaboratively with the state so that all of this work that we're doing, we can make sure that it is consistent with the state guidelines, state regulations, and the state vision, as well as our own. So the recommendations that go into the study are something that can be implemented. It's something that's not going to just sit on the shelf, that when we're done with this, we can work together and say, okay, what's our first task? What are we doing next? How can we make these improvements? So collectively, DOT, the technical advisory committee, our consultants, we can collect data, the technical data, we can analyze it, and we can make recommendations on that. But that's really only telling half the story. The other part of the story that we need to know is how do the users feel? How do the users experience East Main Street? What challenges do they face? And that's where we want to hear from you. And we've provided a bunch of different ways to do this. So, you know, typically we'd have public meetings and we'd have posters. We'd be having a conversation in the auditorium. But with COVID, that's not possible. And wanted to make sure we had plenty of opportunities for people to get this information and for people to provide feedback to us. So Janelle, I'm gonna share my screen here for a minute.
Great. Let me stop.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
And I just want to give you a quick run through of our website. So economic development page, there's an East Main Street corridor study over here. Gives you some summary. All of our meetings are going to be recorded. This is where you can find the recordings. Any documents that we create can all be on here. And this is how we're going to put the information out. We'll probably also use social media and direct contacts with people along East Main Street. But there's many ways that you can talk to us and tell us what you think. We have a comment form. You can fill out the comment form and email it to us. You can email me directly or call me directly. Call if that's your only option that you have. If we have something in writing, this way we know we're sharing it consistently throughout the team and your message doesn't get lost in translation. So writing is preferred, but we do have the ability to call me if you need to. Submit the comment form. This is one of 3 public informational sessions that we will be having to present the information that we're finding. We'll be also having a series of workshop meetings that will be very interactive, guided discussion, where you will be doing more of the talking. These will be virtual, and all that information will be up here as well as soon as they're scheduled, which should be within the next week or so. We should have this information. We've also developed this online mapping tool. And I think this is very critical for this project specifically because there's so many unique challenges along East Main Street. Your comment may not be consistent throughout the whole corridor. So this gives you the ability to come here, type in your name, and type in an address. It will then zoom to a specific section on East Main Street, and you can type in a comment for that. It's either specific property or intersection. If you want to change the location, you just simply click on it. Then you can type in your comment that's related to this section, need sidewalks, and hit submit, and it's that simple. You are welcome to submit as many surveys as you want for the different sections of East Main Street, and also email us where you feel the need. We're here to accept comments because, again, this people on this call, this team is only half the story. You're the other half, and we need to make sure that we're hearing what you think, what your experience is, if you're walking, riding a bike, taking a bus, driving, if you're going to visit, you work there, you own property there, you're a real estate agent, tell us your feedback and what we can do that would make you feel more comfortable on East Main Street, or what things you really like about East Main Street that you don't want us to change. And that's really all I have. And I will, I'm always available, so if you have comments or questions, feel free to email me.
Dessert.
It's fruit. Do you want it? Or a piece of chocolate cake?
All right, Janelle, I think it's back to you.
Great. Let me pull up. Here we go. So great. Thank you. So actually, the polling, so what I can do rather than share the screen, I can launch our first poll question. So let me, this is just gonna be.
This is for Ed and Bill.
Yes, so for our participants, and I see all the questions are here at once, but just answer question 1 at this time.
And Janelle, do you want to prompt them through how they do that?
Are you able to? Do you see that on your screen?
Yeah, I see it. It won't let me submit.
It won't let you submit.
No.
Okay, well, good to know then that this is a run through. So
I mean, I'll take the whole thing out. It won't let you submit.
you can click on things though?
Yeah, yeah. I want to just do all the questions?
That's
Not just
probably
one?
why, you know, I think that's why. Mhm.
So why don't we have, Ed, if you might please check each one just to check them, just to see what happens and see if you can submit.
Oh, okay. Well, I have to make one up then here.
We will hold you to it.
Here comes the mayor. She's back. What if I end the poll? Does that work?
It's gone. I couldn't see
Yeah,
it.
so I see I ended it and let's share the results.
Oh,
Did you pick up my result?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did.
So that's your primary use of East Main Street. We'll return to your other answers as we get to that point in the presentation. So let me back to this. Great.
and Janelle, can you remove the poll frame,
Mhm.
please?
Well, let me see. Is it still there?
Yes.
You have to X out of it, Val.
Yeah,
Oh, is that? Got it.
great. There you
Answer.
are.
Okay. Dale, your turn.
Yes. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Dale Spencer. I am the project manager for BSC Group, the consultant on the project. I'd like to first thank all the representatives from the city, especially Mayor Carbone, and all the representatives from the departments and the agencies for giving BSC the opportunity to provide this for the work on this study. So we, as most studies go, we do have project goals and a scope. If we could skip ahead to the next slide. The limits of the project in this aerial view are, as you can see, this corridor stretches from the lower left to Main Street, at the Main Street, East Main Street intersection, heading in the northeast or to the right, all the way up to the Torrington, New Hartford line. That is 3.5 miles of corridor. It involves segments with multi-lane sections. There are 16 signalized intersections and multiple access points to commercial and residential properties. Going ahead to the project goals of the study. Obviously, but not first and foremost, traffic congestion and safety is a primary issue. Safety concerning some already discovered accident points that have histories of being unsafe. Connectivity between abutting residential neighborhoods in the corridor. This is something that we're looking at, obviously, to make the corridor more accessible to the many residential and somewhat, I won't say congested, but dense residential neighborhoods that surround the corridor. Rather surprising when we first looked at it. It's been commented on several times. Best practices for multimodal transportation. This has been mentioned by Rista and the mayor as well, as striking a balance between the pedestrian, cyclists, and maybe transit patterns and bus commuters as well. And this is something we're looking into to possibly make everybody coexist, or at least these three coexist safely with vehicular improvements along the corridor. And again, another major goal is to encourage sustainable growth patterns. And that's going to be explained in a little more detail later on, but economic development, not only growth for businesses along the corridor that exist now, but future businesses, and a strategy to develop future commercial business along the corridor as well. So another goal. Skipping ahead to or going ahead to the scope of the study. We're engineers and we're planners and landscape architects. And we do need the existing data in order to form the foundation for any recommendations and conceptual development that we may recommend. So we have conducted a field survey and we've collected existing traffic data, which is necessary to continue with the study. Those have a life of about 3 years. That's been completed. Traffic operations and safety, including sidewalks. That is, again, going back to traffic operations, but also touching base with the folks in town, the chief of police, for example, and going back through accident records and things like that, and taking a good look at trying to assess what's going on out there traffic-wise. Physical context, I won't get into that right now because that's the next segment of the presentation. But moving on, developing transportation improvement alternatives. This is a huge part of the study. It does involve taking the foundation formed by collecting all the existing data and then coming up with solutions. And in this particular corridor, there are segments and pieces which require different transportation improvements, in our opinion, so far. Some have unusual traffic congestion. Like I mentioned, some need safety improvement, but others, like the downtown corridor, could lend itself to more connectivity, for example. And we'll get into some of these things as the presentation goes on. Connectivity, again, identifying those opportunities and developing some sort of bus transit or mass transit routes, or at least identifying those opportunities is also part of the scope. Concept plans will be developed, and they actually are in the process of being developed right now, and in some areas, and they will be eventually presented in a forum, hopefully similar to this, or actually hopefully in a live forum at some point, God willing. And all of this really adds up to a study that, as the mayor mentioned and as Rista mentioned, is to form not only cost estimates, but identify facilities and funding sources to strategize possibly breakout projects to present to the Department of Transportation, to the city, to the COG, and to accurately define the requirements of applications and to apply for funding for possibly in the future projects that we've identified. So that, in a nutshell, sums it up. There are many more items, but this is top to bottom. This is where we are now in the top 3, and we're heading towards the last bullet here eventually, hopefully early next year. So the next slide identifies a snapshot of, I believe, the last 1.5 miles. Val, you want to take one, or context, or should I? Val?
I'm unmuting. Yeah, this is where my part starts.
Yeah, okay, thought so.
Thanks, Dale. I just wanted to give a little bit of snapshot of the corridor, and then Michael Klutchman and I are going to take you through some of the physical context that Dale had alluded to. You know, as the mayor aptly said, this is a corridor that continues to evolve, has evolved really since, unfortunately, some of our mainstay of Main Street has left and vacated and headed up East Main Street. The entire corridor, as you heard, is about 3.1 miles long, and about 1.5 miles of the corridor seems to be continuing to develop. And I want folks to understand the distinction. A lot of times when people think of development, they think, oh, there's a green field, there's green space there, and it's going to become development. But what we're actually seeing along East Main is expansions and infill development. So developers are maybe cobbling smaller things together, making larger parcels or making them different. So that's a distinction that's certainly in force as we speak today. Obviously, multifunctions. It's of course a regional shopping destination, but we cannot forget that this is also a neighborhood. It's where people live. It's where people play. And of course, up till maybe a few months ago, it was a major east-west commuter road, and really continues to be in some respects. But all of those things compete often, and they create some dynamics that we certainly have to understand. And those dynamics certainly aren't just in terms of vehicular traffic and traffic congestion, but also the interconnections of the neighborhoods. Right now, we don't have a lot of connectivity. The safe pedestrian and bike linkages are non-existent. A term that you might be hearing in the future is active transportation opportunities. Active transportation is something that's more human form, bike and pedestrian mainly. And right now, we don't see a lot of that. We also don't see apparent transit. We know that there's nodes there. We know there's some bus service, but it's not obvious. And so that's something we also need to understand. And then certainly is my last point, we are at a tipping point that if you don't manage traffic and you don't understand the linkage between traffic and land use and how people live, you really can affect not just quality of life, but businesses. As you know, that when there's a lot of traffic, you tend to attract national retailers, and they love those traffic counts. You get too high traffic counts, and then it's a detriment to business. So we're talking about striking a balance here. Next slide. So we talked about physical context, and you can go to the next slide, Janelle.
Great.
And actually, do you want to try this again? See if we
Yeah, or we
Ed
can,
or Bill have.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't want to detract away from the slides, we can just put everybody on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just talk about it.
Yeah. So Ed or Bill, have you ever walked or biked along the corridor?
I've had to walk because my car was being repaired. I know there was some reason, I can't remember why, but I remember it wasn't a good experience.
Okay. That's what we
Somewhere,
wanted.
it was somewhere around BJ, and I had
Now
to
they can-
walk up to where like the Nissan dealership used to be, Alphonse.
Yep. Yep.
And it might have been winter too, and it was not, you really miss the sidewalks. There's really not a walking path in some areas.
Right. Okay. But,
Plus, I've also walked.
Yeah.
I've walked from Sullivan's car dealership to Panera multiple times.
okay.
And you basically, you're walking a highway. It doesn't really feel very safe to walk over there. So,
Okay. Bill.
Go ahead.
Yeah. They can't hear me. Hello.
Hi.
We can hear you, Bill.
I'm trying to have you hear me, but I can't see. Oh, you can.
Well, why don't they say yes?
My property is where the old Cumberland Farms was before they moved? My property's across the street from that. It used to be P&O Lumber. That's Paganini and Ohot Nicky. And I bought it. They had it after the war. It was a lumber yard. And then we bought it from them in the late 70s. And I've been there in my business for 35 years. And now it's over 40 years I've owned it. And really, I've been screaming about sidewalks. I can't talk anymore. I'm too old. I don't even care about it anymore. I've been screaming about sidewalks in the whole damn city. And you get nothing, you get no response. No one has ever called me from the city on what can I do for you. All I got this year, listen to this. Listen to this. I got an increase in my taxes of 21.5%. Do you know what that does to, I just own the property and try to collect rents They're very low because you can't get much money nowadays. Anyway, it's dismal. It's dismal. And no one, you people could call me. I'm retired. I'd love to deal with you. And I have all kinds of information. I can tell you about that road when we drilled under it. Do you realize that that 202 road has is so thick from the top down in layers and layers of concrete? You've got to go down 7 or 8 feet to get under that road. It's, you know, the accidents in front of my place have gone away, basically. When we had Cumberland Farms there, we had 2 accidents a week. It was a nightmare. It was a disaster. But anyway, I'd love to see sidewalks. I'd love to see more cooperation instead of just raising the taxes. And we fought it, but we lost. Didn't even know, no one would even hear of it. So I've owned the property almost 45 years. I
Bill,
know
what's your address, Bill?
At that property,
Yes.
I live right around the corner. I live at 278 Highfield Drive, Torrington, Connecticut, 06790.
Your business.
The business is 1083 East Main. We have a bunch of people in there
Yes,
that have been in there for a long time, and we have
dancing school,
the dancing school,
UPS.
UPS and FedEx, and
Good.
Joe Adorno's been there for years, and we got a hairdresser and a doggy girl, you know, little stuff like that. Excuse me. I got warehouses in the back where guys keep trucks and so on. And, you know, I'm getting so old now, I'd like to sell it, but I don't have a buyer. People don't want it. It doesn't really pay for itself. Taxes are so damn going up. There's nobody wants to talk about the taxes. I don't know what we can do about that, but I'd love to.
So Bill, thank you.
Bond, put the sidewalks in, put them in tomorrow. You don't need 50 million surveys. Put them in, bond it.
Bill,
Yeah.
thank you. We're gonna let the
I know
mayor
we're
respond for a minute and then get on with
Yeah.
the presentation.
No, thank you, Val. So, Bill, this is Eleanor Carbone.
Hey, Eleanor, how you doing, sweetie?
Good. So I stand corrected in the beginning when I was making my welcoming remarks. I think I said I was the only one on the call that may recall when East Main Street was not this bustling commercial developed byway. I call it a highway. I will gladly speak with you about some of the concerns you have regarding your property, regarding your taxes, outside of the meeting here tonight. But I like the fact that you have so much history on East Main Street, and knowing that you're on Highfield, knowing that you're not that far from where that business development is. I'm curious, when was the last time you walked on East Main Street? Do you walk on East Main?
Are you kidding?
I know. Okay.
Are you kidding me? Where am I
No.
going to walk to? I couldn't walk to. We couldn't even cross the street when Cumberland Farms was there. You can't cross the street. Forget about crossing the street unless you have a light. And then you can't walk. People walk up and down in front of our place every single day. I feel so sorry for them. I say a prayer for them. They're walking in the grass. It's ridiculous.
That is, and that's exactly what we want to hear as part of this public informational is what is your experience? So I agree, walking that. The last time I rode my bike on East Main Street, my youngest son was 2 years old in a child seat on the back of my bicycle. I said, that's it. I'm never doing that again.
You can't ride a bike on these. Suicide. You don't see
Oh,
bikes.
we'd like to change that.
Yeah, but what I like, yeah, exactly. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to accomplish that these streets, these roads should be accommodating bicyclists and pedestrians and traffic.
That's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah. And I like that you bring to the table that perspective of how many people you actually see walking on East Main Street, because that's the other reality that many people that avoid East Main Street or that have no reason to go up to that end of town and they stay on the West End or downtown. You bring that perspective to the table, and I greatly appreciate that, because when we look at those goat paths up and down East Main Street, we know are walking there.
You
So-
can't, those poor people that don't have a car and they work at Walmart or they work at Target or they work at Price Chopper. I mean, how the hell do you do that?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't understand. But I mean, sidewalks, this has been 45 years I've been begging for sidewalks. Forget about it. I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're going to get another survey and all this. I don't know.
Bill, just so we're clear, Bill,
I'm very discouraged about this whole thing.
the survey that Rista discussed is just an electronic means to hear from folks, just like you expressed your opinions. So other folks might want to, rather than participate and talk openly, they might want to just use that electronic version. And we certainly hope they do. But this isn't just about a survey. There's actually, you see this, the city engineer here, Paul is in the midst of actually bidding for sidewalks in certain areas.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm 77. You think I'll see one before I kick the bucket?
Well,
yes.
You sound like you will, yes. So let's move on, Janelle. So we know that it's, certainly there's not a lot of people looking to use the corridor for enjoyment, as Bill noted.
Yeah.
So we can skip to the next slide, Janelle.
Great.
So let's talk about these corridor segments. This is part of a physical context analysis that I have done with BSC's assistance. And, certainly it's important to understand the physical characteristics of a corridor, not just traffic, but the physical characteristics and certainly the surrounding areas. And it's critical because this physical context provides the foundation for understanding relationships of land use and residents and businesses. In fact, Bill aptly put it, that relationship of people walking, where they're working, what his experience is as a business owner. In general, the corridor climbs from the western segment to the eastern segment, and you folks know more than I do. I mean, you can tell it climbs significantly in some cases. And in general, what we've done is we've broken the corridor up into 4 sections. And there are certainly similar characteristics throughout this corridor, but in these 4 segments, we've differentiated in certain aspects just to call out really the corridor as it evolves from downtown to the city line to New Hartford. So I'm going to talk a little bit about general context, and then Michael Klutchman is going to add maybe a little bit more flavor in terms of urban fabric and things, but we won't belabor on each slide. We do want to touch on a number of highlights. So the first one is probably the most obvious in terms of the downtown fabric. A portion of it, as you can see from 5 Points and our new Franklin Plaza, it starts there and heads up and stops just beyond the glass building. And of course, part of this is within the downtown district zone. And certainly the climb in terms of the corridor doesn't start till just beyond the glass building. But this segment really feels like downtown. There's a couple areas like around the Rite Aid and there's some automotive uses, but it really hugs the corridor and it still feels like downtown here. And clearly it is the gateway. And to the north, we've got some residential. If you head up farther north, there's Wolcott Technical School. There's the Torrington High School. Farther over, there's Aldi's and Jake's Way Back. Also, obviously, distinguishing this segment is Route 8. It really is another gateway. And I think we've all joked in the hundreds of meetings I've been through in Torrington with the mayor and Rista the last few years. People note Route 8 and they go, yeah, where Burger King is. So you know what? We're going to call that out as an opportunity. We know it's there. We know there's a lot of traffic. And, from a visual standpoint, it's an opportunity to improve. As Marty Connor knows, your city planner, there's also been some development interest there. So this is really a significant segment of the corridor. Michael, you want to add some more to that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Val. So one thing that we can talk about as we talk about each segment, amongst other things, but you'll see on this plan here, the yellow, there's going to be some colors here, the yellow, blue, and red along the edge of this road show where there's either existing sidewalks, no sidewalks at all, or you'll see blue as we go down the street, which is the proposed sidewalk project that we've been talking about. So you can see how the first step at sort of connecting the dots. We also see where there's still lots of missing areas for walking. But in the downtown area, there actually are existing sidewalks pretty much on both sides of the street. Now, the condition is something that, you know, there are many that are ready for upgrades, repairs, accessibility. So, you know, they're not in perfect condition, and we might want to look at how ramps work, how you can cross the street safely. But again, there are existing sidewalks here. They just need to be improved. We also have 4 buildings. Again, we start in the downtown. There's a larger scale, older downtown buildings. Real, you know, the opportunities for a streetscape. Some of the other, like Main Street has been done as a new streetscape, as we talked about. So there's the opportunity to expand that, but as a gateway downtown. But then, as you know, as soon as you get to the Route 8 interchange, there's a lot more opportunity, as Val says, to create, again, more of a gateway, really reinforce the pedestrian experience. You're starting to climb up the hill. As we go, I actually looked, there's about 500 feet between we get here to up near Walmart. So that's a big climb. This actually starts climbing very slowly, but again, you're not really perceiving that. There are some street trees. There's not a lot of vegetation, but again, this is mostly a complete building facades. And then the architecture gets a little smaller. We have some residential right mixed in right between before Route 8. And so there's a lot of opportunity here for a gateway as we were discussing. So I think it's really existing stuff. Yeah.
Janelle, next slide, please. So this segment, this next segment, I think you folks just looking at this, it looks different. Definitely looks different. We're calling this the Western Neighborhood Commercial segment. Because yeah, it's Western, but more importantly, there's really more distinction of a mix of neighborhood and commercial, some residential. And in fact, this segment is, I believe, the only segment in the entire corridor where there is actually a residential zone fronting, I think it's R6, Marty, fronting East Main Street. And so R6, by the way, is a 6,000 square foot lot under the city's zoning regs. So for the most part, we've got small businesses on the south side and then residential on the north side. Right as we come out of the downtown gateway segment, that's where it really starts to climb. And as Michael noted, you know, we know we're going up. But when you're starting to walk it, and Lord knows if you try to bike it, that's when you realize how much of a significant climb, particularly in that segment that you're hitting. So as we move eastward, there's more businesses. And as you can see towards that eastern side, there are more commercial, more larger businesses. And of course, that segment ends at the newly renovated, well, it's the old bowling alley, but we're now calling it Skytop, and they've done a wonderful job of redeveloping that. But so there's that transition out of more of the downtown feel into more of a commercial segment. But again, not large lots, not large users, although there is starting to be a transition from west to east. Michael, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so again, we'll talk about the sidewalks. So you can see in the blue here, Exactly, and especially near that residential area that you were pointing out, Val.
Mhm.
The blue area, there is no, or very little sidewalk connectivity. So if you live right there, or you want to move from one side to another, right now you're already sort of starting to take your life in your hand. You're starting to climb up about 200 feet over this segment, going up a hill. You can't see cars coming up over the hill or behind you, and there's really nowhere to walk. So this is an example of the work the city is already undertaking to really make a huge improvement with this sidewalk goes in. It's the first step in creating connectivity, and they've been very strategic about where the sidewalks can go at this point. So you can see they're concentrated on the north side for now, but it does tie together a large segment, which is really not walkable right now. So as we develop these, it's not only looking at, okay, let's make it possible to walk down East Main Street, but we're starting to look at, as we move out of the downtown into, okay, where are there connections to the north and south to neighborhoods? Like if yes, somebody might not bike on this segment, but if they want to cross, where are those crossings going to happen? So that if you want to go visit your neighbor who's across East Main, there's a clear, safe place to do that with sight lines and the traffic signals as needed. So starting to think about how you would cross from one side to another or make a bike route connection.
Okay, next, Janelle, please. Thank you. So this third segment is what we're calling the commercial transition segment. And we're calling that because in this leg, there really is a clear transition to more high density commercial businesses. There are at least 4 auto dealers in a row in this segment. The land uses are certainly more intensive and larger. There is significant development around the Torringford West intersection where the new Cumberland Farms is. There's also across from the auto dealers, there's the Enterprise Rent-A-Car business and a couple other smaller businesses there, also Pizza Palace. I'm noting that because they're so close to the right-of-way, the quarter right-of-way, there's almost no room to pull in. There's almost no maneuvering there. So in this segment, there's a lot going on. But besides that corridor, there is a lot of large residential, multifamily residential. I think we've got Curry Terrace. We've got Laurel Acres, like right behind Cumberland Farms. I think to the south, well, we have the Torringford Elementary School, of course. We have the Torringford West Senior Housing, which is tucked in sort of west of BJ's. And then on the other side of BJ's, we have Georgetown. So those are large, institutional multifamily uses as well as residential, and they're all funneling into this segment. So
we also have a 92 unit apartment complex in 2 buildings that's on the agenda for planning and zoning to review at their next meeting in Corey Terrace. So
oh really? Okay, good to know.
When you're looking at Corey Terrace right now, that wooded area to the left of the units there.
Janelle, can you point that out right below multifamily on the west side?
Where? Right over here?
Yeah, so that area right there, where you can see the pavement, it's just going to connect to that on the other side of those units there. So 2 buildings, 92 units, 55 and over.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe we can figure out how to connect that to East Main Street somehow. We'll take a look at that. When is it on the agenda?
October 14th.
October 14th. Okay. Okay. So, well, Michael, why don't you finish up here?
So again, just you can see we've got now we're starting to see the continuation of the little, there's some little segments of yellow, it's existing sidewalk, where it's being tied together by the blue, the current proposed sidewalk project, which is in design and, hopefully coming very soon. But you're starting to see now the red stripes, and those are things which are still, missing areas of sidewalk if we want to be continuously walking along this segment. The other thing to sort of note here is compared actually to the last segment, this again is climbing another few hundred feet. So you're on the hill, you're going up. Traffic's a little scary to walk along, but also there's the segment right before did have some trees and some landscapes and mature vegetation that sort of made it a little more pleasant if there was a sidewalk. There's not a lot of vegetation either, so there's wide, the curb cuts are getting a little wider. It becomes another level challenging, and if you're walking from downtown, it's you're that much more tired going up this hill. But again, this is where can people cross, given the housing, where can they access, they may actually want to walk to one of these businesses now as there's more business fronting the street. So it's an opportunity to make connections. Great, thank you.
Okay. Lastly, of course, as we all know, not very creative here, but we're calling it the Eastern Gateway, obviously, because it is, and it's also the regional shopping segment. Here, as you all know, this is characterized by very large national retailers. And for the most part, they're really reflecting what we now call, a suburban retail format. But distinctively, it did occur to me, just because I shop mostly over there when I can, is that Target and Walmart, to the south there, unlike many of the larger national retailers, they do not dominate the frontage of East Main Street, which is wonderful. We'd like to see some better access there, but access management, but at least they're utilizing a deeper lot instead of spreading out across the frontage and blocking sort of that rear area, which sometimes we do try to funnel people in. So that's a little different play there. But for the most part, it is a suburban style, very large uses. Interestingly, if you go onto Google, you can see the pattern emerge. The residential in this segment changes dramatically because it's becoming more rural residential than maybe the suburban sort of subdivision types that are in the other segments, as well as the downtown, which is much denser. So, we're getting into the rural area. Obviously, we're heading into New Hartford. So things are changing quickly. In the western segment, you'll see Dibble Street there. There's a little bit of infill and possibly some new development activity that could be accommodated there. But we want to know Dibble Street because guess what? It's a straight shot, turns into Kennedy Drive and shoots you over to Winstead Road and that area. So that's somewhat of a cut through, but it might be able to provide us an opportunity to maybe do some type of bike connection. So we want to look at that beyond development, but also connectivity. And notably also Torringford Street also shoots down to Route 4. So there's no question of why, besides the national retailers and the traffic counts, there's a reason why this development is there, and I think why it will succeed. And I think in this area also, you're seeing more auto uses, and so maybe this will become the more developed area of the corridor, and these other segments will become more infill because there's smaller areas you can cobble together. But certainly this here is today, and I think in the future, serving as a regional destination. Michael, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the character, again, you can see the red, there really is not a lot of sidewalks here. And to be honest, it's not where you might choose to walk anyway. If you're shopping, it's not, likely if you're going to Walmart or one of the larger stores, you're not probably carrying your stuff out, but a lot of people do. And then we're talking about connections. So there's there's no reason to consider, again, we have these missing pieces for walkability and crossing connections, but, we're aware that this area is going to be and continue to be dominated by the automobile parking at these larger places. So we just have to figure a way to make all those things work together so that we can get the traffic into the larger stores and out, but also have a way where you can actually cross those driveways without getting, run over. You're also, just to sort of follow up on our sequence, visually you're actually at the top of the hill now. You'll go down by the city limits. So your sight line is longer. It looks a lot more wide and broad open. So if you had to walk down here, because I think that's how it might be right now, like you had to go to a car dealership. I think we heard something that before, and it was winter. You're up at the top of the hill. There's not a lot of protection. You're kind of exposed. So it's sort of a wide open space, and as it's really a matter of how does it make it most comfortable to have connections and move along the corridor. Thank you.
That is the physical context, and we now have Michael Santos from BSC to talk about really the traffic studies that Dale alluded to earlier. There's a significant amount of traffic data and traffic assessments that they've done, at least for this existing conditions portion. And in the future, we'll be digesting the traffic data and developing concepts once we listen to the public and we have a better sense of direction on connectivity, and develop some recommendations. But Mike, you want to take them through? I don't know how much detail you want to share, but have at it.
All right. So
We
my
have
name's
another quiz.
Yep. My name's Mike Santos. I'm a traffic and transportation engineer with BSC Group, and I'm just going to talk briefly about what we have done to date so far for traffic and transportation evaluation. I'll be reiterating a lot what was already said, just because we went down there and took an inventory of all the existing conditions. We noted all of the sidewalk deficiencies, and I'm not from Torrington, and I think my first visit down there, one of the biggest issues that I also noticed was that the sidewalks are very not continuous. It's very difficult to walk around there, and I know throughout the presentation there's been pretty good focus on that. We went out and collected some traffic data. So we collected peak hour traffic counts. We can go down to the next slide. I'll just get into the questions first. I think this was part of the original poll. So how many cars travel along East Main Street every day? So we did do some counts at several locations along East Main Street. So we know the answer to this. And, we also did some research on safety. So we dug through CONDOT data and, for the past 3 years and determined, what the high crash locations are. And there are several of them. So
Ed, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, well, I'm going to probably say somewhere, I would think maybe 50,000 cars a day. That's pretty trafficked. That may be high. I'm torn between B and C.
And then what about number 2?
I would say if Torringford West is where BJ's is, I would say probably that intersection is one of the more dangerous ones.
Okay, well, good answers. So the traffic counts you're seeing about, depending on where you are in the corridor, you're seeing anywhere between 11,000 to all the way up to, about 20,000 throughout the corridor. The lower volumes are actually more closer to the downtown area. The higher volumes are pretty much between Torringford Street and Route 4. But it's still pretty heavy, especially, where you only have, one lane in each direction, or just, 2 lanes in the eastbound direction, 1 lane in the westbound direction.
Is that both directions, or is that just one direction?
Yeah, that's both directions. I know I know it's kind of hard to visualize, how many vehicles travel on any given roadway during a 24-hour period, but this is, anywhere between 12 and 20,000. And, two high crash locations were Torringford Street and Torringford West. And I'll get into some of the reason, why we think that is the case later on. So we can continue. Just to kind of go over, I was going over what we've done to date. So we've collected some traffic count data, throughout the corridor at all of the signalized intersections. I believe there's 16 or 17 locations, and at a few unsignalized locations. So we looked at the peak hour morning and evening counts, along with the 24-hour counts. Just to let you know, we did the counts last November for half of the corridor, and then we did some more counts this past March, pretty much like I think 2 weeks before the entire world shut down. So there, I checked them with the CONDOT data, and they're pretty accurate. So I'm not too concerned that they're low due to what's going on in the world today. Fortunately, we were able to collect that data before, everything shut down. And as Val and Michael had explained before, we broke this down into 4 segments. So there's the downtown gateway segment. You're seeing lower speeds. There's parking lanes on either side of the road. There's pretty good sidewalks there. They're damaged in some locations, but there is good pedestrian connectivity there. Single lane in each direction. It's a little bit more walkable community. As we go towards the east through the Route 8 interchange and Route 4 and up the hill, you see steeper grades. Third lane is added to the eastbound direction. Speeds increase a lot more. And that's where you kind of see a drop off in any pedestrian connectivity. There are some traffic signals that serve some of the minor side streets, but even at those locations, the pedestrian signal equipment is either non-existent or it's not up to code for ADA compliance. So it's very hard. And we heard this comment earlier. It's very hard for a pedestrian just to cross East Main Street. Especially as you kind of get east of Route 4, between Route 4 and Torringford West Street. And as we keep going further to the east, you see higher speeds, larger commercial properties. So there's fewer curb cuts, but the curb cuts that are out there are, higher intensity with higher traffic volumes, such as, the BJ's and some of the more medium-sized commercial lots that you see. And then finally to the east is the Gateway Regional Shopping Center, where it's essentially a 5-lane cross section if you count the the turn lanes there and the 2 through lanes in each direction. You're seeing higher volumes. There's the pedestrian facilities are non-existent, and it kind of looks like the sidewalks that are in place were just installed as each individual development was built. So it's done kind of piecemeal. So there's really no good connectivity throughout the entire area towards the east. So you can go to the next slide. So here's just some of the locations that we are currently focusing on. And again, we did all of this existing conditions analysis, which is going to be the baseline in the framework for our final recommendations and solutions to any problems, and trying to fix any issues that we see out there. So some of the locations that we're going to be focusing on are the Route 8 interchange, East Main Street from the Route 8 interchange all the way up to Route 4. That's one area that we see a lot of conflicts. There's the intersection of East Elm Street and LC Road that intersects somewhere in there as well, and we saw some issues out there related to safety. And again, at Torringford West, there's a lot of issues that we'll get into there. Dibble Street, it's a signalized location, kind of higher speeds, and at Torringford Street, the same, very similar to Dibble Street. And then another location that's not shown on here is the segment between Torringford Street and the Target driveway, where you have a 5-lane cross section throughout that entire segment. So we can go to the next slide there. This is just where we did the traffic counts. So the yellow dots are the locations we collected in November. of last year. The green ones are locations where we collected data in March of this year. So this includes every single signalized intersection throughout the entire corridor. Plus, I believe there are 2 or 3 unsignalized locations that we counted. Go to the next one. We did look at traffic operations using the traffic counts that we had and all of the traffic signal timings, and doing observations out there to understand where congestion was happening. And I understand it's a very congested roadway in general. Probably not so much right now as it normally is. But again, the key locations that we saw were, and these letters again are level of service. So that is basically a grade on how much vehicular delay drivers see at each intersection. And it's rated from A to F, where A is lower delays and F is higher delays. So you see some of the intersections in the western part are, A and B. That's kind of where you have the low volume side streets. The traffic signals are generally green along, for most of the time on East Main Street. The cycles are pretty short. So they there's not a lot of delay there. Then as you get through the interchange and at New Harwinton Road at Route 4, you see some deterioration, and you see a D's and F's. That's kind of due to the high traffic volumes on Route 4 and on East Main Street competing for the, essentially the green time in the traffic signal. Then, as you go to the east, there's not as much delay. Again, the side streets are low volume until you get to Torringford West, where you see the higher volumes. And again, it's down to D&E. And then at Torringford Street, you see, delays there. And then again at the Walmart and Target driveways. So, again, the major intersections where you see the higher traffic volumes is where you're seeing the congestion happen. So we can go to the next slide. This is a map. It's kind of a pretty good visual map that shows where crashes are occurring. It's called the crash heat map. So this is all of the data points for where crashes happen over the past 5 years. The red spots are where a lot of crashes are happening. Again, you can see at Torringford West, there's a huge red dot there. Torringford Street, there's red dots, and then again at the Route 8 interchange and New Harwinton Road, and then select, various locations throughout the corridor. But you can really see the Torringford West Street and Torringford Street intersections are the high crash locations. And just to give you some reference, so over the past 3 years, not including 2020, so 2017, 18, and 19, there were between 60 and 70 crashes at each location. So you're seeing more than 20 crashes a year, reported crashes a year at each location. That number could be higher for things that aren't reported, but that's the number of crashes reported with the police department. So, and again, there's a lot of there's a lot of turning movements, especially at Torringford West. There's a lot of conflicts. There's no turn lanes on some approaches. So, those things really contribute to, what we call angle collisions, where you see a vehicle turning, either, colliding into a vehicle that's going through, or, through vehicle colliding into a turning vehicle. So, eventually we'll get to some solutions for those existing issues, but right now we're just going to go over, what we found. We can go to the next slide. So I'll just walk you through the 4 segments. I'll try to be brief about this. And I think a lot of this was already said. Again, this is a downtown gateway segment. And there's pretty good pedestrian connectivity. There's sidewalks on both sides. There are some wide curb cuts. There are a lot of curb cuts. Some of these curb cuts actually serve businesses that are just kind of pull-in parking. And when we were down there doing some site visits, we noticed that some of these businesses, they just, the vehicles block the entire sidewalk and don't allow passage through. Some of the other issues that we saw down here are, again, left turns. There's a lot of curb cuts and there's pretty much unrestricted access. So there's a lot of left turns from the unsignalized locations in the driveways. that create some safety issues. You know, through the Route 8 interchange, we see, you know, there's some pavement issues. It's all cracked and the pavement markings aren't really there. They're either faded or missing. Most of the signal equipment throughout the entire corridor is outdated. There's some visibility issues where essentially, you know, especially during sunset and sunrise, the signals can be difficult to see with the glare. There's no back panels on them. Then right here, we called out the issues at East Elm Street. There's a very wide pedestrian crossing there. There's some sight distance issues, especially as vehicles travel, you know, in the westbound direction on East Main Street down the hill. It's just kind of hard to turn left out of there, and it's very difficult to see anybody crossing the street there. So we go to the next one. Oh, we can go to the next slide. Again, there's some capacity issues at Route 4. That's a tight situation there where we have 2 lanes in the eastbound direction. We have 1 lane in the westbound direction. You know, I think we really need to add some capacity. There's just a single lane on Route 4. So with those geometric limitations and the amount of traffic that we're seeing there, it's really causing a lot of capacity and queuing and delays at that location. And again, as we go to the east, I think this was already said several times that pedestrian facilities are lacking, they're missing, they're disjointed, discontinuous. The pedestrian signal equipment at the traffic signals either is non-existent or it's not up to code. And again, you know, that's a result of just not having any sidewalks. So there's really no sense in having pedestrian equipment if there's nothing to connect to. And again, pretty much all the curb ramps at each location are not ADA compliant. So, you know, if you're someone in a wheelchair, you're going to have difficulty even crossing the street and getting back on the sidewalk where it does exist. We can go to the next one. So now we're in the commercial transition segment. It kind of centers around that Torringford West Street intersection. That location is a difficult one. There are a lot of curb cuts at the Cumberland Farms and at the property across the street. There are very wide curb cuts. The circulation on each one of these respective sites is also confusing and not really well defined. Also, you know, in the westbound direction, there's a left turn lane to turn left onto Torringford West, southbound. But just prior to that, there's also the BJ's driveway, and I think it's a Dunkin' Donuts, where you have a lot of people turning left from that turn lane that aren't actually going through the intersection. So there's just a lot of left turn conflicts at this location. And in the northbound and southbound directions, you don't have any turn lanes, so even turning left there is difficult. So this is something we'll be focusing on this location, you know, in this study, trying to come up with some good recommendations for what we can do there. So go to the next one. And then finally, the easternmost segment, again, I talked about this a little while ago. The segment east of Torringford Street is, you know, between Torringford Street and Target is essentially a 5-lane highway. It's just a very wide swath of pavement. There's a left turn lane in the westbound direction for Torringford Street, but it overlaps the Walmart driveway. So there's really no definition between, you know, where the left turn lane for Torringford Street ends and the left turn lane for the Walmart driveway begins. You know, there's not a lot of curb cuts here, but again, left turns are difficult to go across the, 3 lanes of traffic at a minimum. And again, there are sidewalks at the Target driveway intersection, and there is a crosswalk that goes across the 5 lanes on the western leg But again, the signal equipment doesn't really allow for safe passage. If you hit the pedestrian signal button there, you're basically walking when the target driveway goes, and there are a lot of left turns from that target driveway. So, I think that there's some improvements we can probably do with, the pedestrian facilities throughout the entire corridor, at the traffic signals and along the sidewalks. So that, that was our existing conditions analysis. Safety, traffic volumes, congestion, pedestrian facilities are the things that we're focusing on. And again, we're going to use all of this information plus whatever input we get from the public or city officials to, really come up with some good recommendations for improvements out here. And I think that's the last slide for traffic. So thank you.
Great.
I know we're running a little late because we started late, but I'm just going to hit these real high level. In the future, you're going to be seeing more analyses and basically recommendations on these focus areas. So working with the TAC and city officials directly, we developed basically these 7 areas that we think we want to look closer at. And it's not just for development or development reuse. We could be looking at traffic improvements. We could be looking at access management, connectivity, accessibility, and placemaking and urban design, or all of them. So we're going to look at that geographic area. Go ahead. Yep. So we're going to look at the target Walmart area, big lots, particularly for the development behind big lots, the rear parcel, as well as Wendy's and the adjacent parcel I alluded that to earlier, the Dibble Street cutoff, and there is a development parcel next to Valvoline. Next slide. And then we have the former Rite Aid. We have obviously the iconic glass building, and we have basically that Route 8 node that includes Burger King and the Twin Colonies, so that area altogether. And we also have, which obviously we've been talking a lot about, not just from a development standpoint, but from traffic, the Torringford West intersection and that area, including BJ's and Dunkin' Donuts and that area, as well as that East Main block that I talked about with Enterprise. You can see that right, that front yard, you have about a car's length worth of front yard, and that's about it. So we want to look at that as well. But that will be for future. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're going to be diving into in our next leg, along with these traffic recommendations that Mike has alluded to. Next slide. So real quickly, obviously, we've done a lot of data collection. We've done a lot of analyses. We've tried to summarize it tonight for you, and certainly this presentation will be put on the city's website. But there's a lot of work to do in terms of talking to property owners and talking to businesses. Most of this in the age of COVID, we're going to be doing virtually. Although when we can, Rista and I have been meeting with folks outside, in front of a property or somewhere, wherever it's safe, as long as we can maintain safe social distancing. And then, of course, as I said, we're going to be developing recommendations. We need to look at these transit routes and some opportunities to create more transit opportunities. And then as we go through the data, we're going to be preparing some site concepts for each of those focus areas we talked about, and really integrating all of the data that we analyzed with the development nodes, with the focus areas. And of course, what we hope to do is at some point, maybe in December, to come back with some recommendations that we can share with you. And eventually, if we can finalize those recommendations, we'll have another meeting sometime early in January. So that's really the big picture on our next steps. Next slide. Does anybody have questions or what have you? Let me just do that next slide, and then we can ask Ed and Bill if they want to have some other questions, so we don't have to cut them off. Yeah. This is just, really what Rista was talking about early on, and as she showed you, going to the city's website, we're going to be continuing to post information. We do have that comment form that can be done as many times as you feel, for particularly folks that are going to be watching this after tonight. Sign up for email alerts if you need a prompt. Rista can maybe come up with an email list so that you know that these meetings are coming. And then, of course, we have these other virtual town hall meetings scheduled for December and January. And then, of course, as we talked about, we want to make sure that if you can, to take that survey and just to give us some sense of what you're experiencing. Are you walking? Are you biking? Are you driving? Are you fed up? Whatever it is, we certainly want to hear from you. Okay, so Janelle, with that, why don't we ask Ed and Bill if they've got some more questions, feedback, what have you.
Bill?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have any. My wife said I talk too much and I sound dumb. So anyway, you want to know anything, you can call me anytime. I'm retired and I've been around. I've seen accidents or people walk. I know the whole story on East Main.
Bill, how do we reach you?
Hey, Bill, you can email me your contact information.
I'll tell you my phone number. It's 7.
It'll be on a live public meeting if you don't mind, or you can email Rista.
I don't mind. I get a million calls. 733-3365.
All right, got it.
No one has ever called me for anything of this kind.
Bill, we're going to
listen,
call you every day.
I love you girls. You're beautiful. Who are you related to Ray Farrell?
Oh, I don't know.
No? Okay. I
Possibly. Where is he from? Is he from Bristol?
No, he's from, actually, I think he ended up in Harwinton. He passed away. But anyway, most of my people passed. I can tell you about what's going on East Main Street, and I'll be happy to give you information. And
Bill, I'm telling you, Rista and I are coming to see you.
I own 2 acres there. I've owned it for 45 years. I've seen it go. And, I really like to improve the property and make some money on it if I die. Let's work together. I'd be happy to do anything. So thank you very much. That's all I got.
Appreciate it, Bill.
Hey,
And we'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah.
If I could throw a comment in, I'm just really glad to see that someone's working on East Main Street. It's good to know that there's some progress going on. Because I definitely feel there's traffic issues there. I've driven that road enough times and, had enough close calls. Thank God, I've never had an accident there. But
How long you been around here, Ed?
2007.
Oh, you're very new.
Actually, the first year we were here, we were going to Target on the day after Christmas. And it was this long line of traffic and a truck rear-ended me in front of the Nissan dealership. That was my introduction to Torrington.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when we bought that place on East Main, 2 acres, they told us, what are you going way out of town for?
Oh,
Oh, man.
That's what they said. We're going way out of town. Now, we're in town, but of course, everything is parking, everything is sidewalks, these are the things you got to talk about.
Yeah,
Right,
so this
Mayor?
Yeah, I was just going to say that exactly. These are the things that, and unfortunately, because this is a state road, that the local control is just not there. We really are beholden to the state's priorities. So, and I'm not saying that because I'm trying to shift any blame for why does it take 2 years for us to get sidewalks approved so that we can start construction. But
Can't you just put a bond up for sidewalks?
no, we have the money. Yeah, no, we have the money. We
You
have
don't
that.
even need the money. Put the bond it, and they'll be done.
Well, yeah. But even if we paid for it ourselves out of the local taxpayers' dollars or borrowed the money, the state still has to approve the construction. So that's why this particular stretch of road is very complicated. But I would even say with the property that you own on that street, we want to do everything we can to make sure that you're realizing all of your goals to make that property more valuable and easier to access.
Listen, this is the busiest street in Litchfield County. Well, not county, but you get off of Route 8, people don't want to go to Walmart and Target and these big stores if they live from Watertown south. I found this out for years. South of Watertown, they go to Waterbury, but north of Watertown, they come here. And the same thing is true for northwestern Connecticut. Sharon and Cornwall and Goshen, all those towns, they come. Nobody is going to buy toothpaste in Sharon, Connecticut, when they have a Walmart down here and they can buy deodorant and everything else, toilet paper. They come down here. So I say that this is a great opportunity for Torrington, this East Main Street traffic. It's a great opportunity. This is a massive, it's a wonderful thing. And, you know, Route 44, exit, Burger King, the busiest Burger King in the state, I understand. That's a wonderful opportunity. Come up here and go to those big stores, and anybody along the way should make money on their businesses because they're going to get a lot of traffic.
So you tell your wife that you're the smartest man on the call because you're absolutely right.
Let's make money on traffic. Let's be upbeat about the traffic. It's wonderful. All I've heard tonight is, oh, it's so bad. I want to kill myself. Listen, this traffic is keeping Torrington alive.
We agree. We're just going to find a way to make sure that they transition in and out of that road as seamlessly and as safely as possible. So I think at this point, I probably should turn this over. I don't know, Val, were you done with the?
Yeah, I think, yep, I wanted to turn it back over to you and Rista just for some final comments and then go from there.
Okay. So I'll just get my soundbite in. I greatly appreciate Bill's insight as a property owner on East Main Street, as somebody who's seen that road change over his lifetime. It's a great perspective that we needed and that we welcome. And Ed Canada, you've been so involved with the city, knowing everything that we've been trying to do over the last 7 to 10 years. It's really helpful to even bring that fresh perspective as somebody who moved here, who chose to move here. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of sessions. I'm looking forward to hearing more feedback. Looking forward to what the final result is, but more importantly, I'm looking forward to those sidewalks going in. So Rista, if you want to take it from there.
Sure, I don't have much more to add. I just, Bill, I have your number and I'll definitely be in touch. And, thank you everybody for your part in this presentation and explaining where we are and where we've gotten and where we're going.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Maureen. Bye, Craig.
Good night.
Take care. Have a
Bye.
great night.